Good evening. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live stream video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary-Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, that's 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted on your screen below the live stream at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call, and when you do call in, staff will provide you with further instructions to join the video conference, and they will ask for your name and number and address and the item that you wish to address. When the chair of the committee polls the interested parties, the Secretary-Treasurer will unmute you when it is time to speak. The applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of their application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for the presentation, and you will need to state your name, address, and for the record. And any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will then be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make your presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to comments made by interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in staff report, particularly with the proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussion. Any person desiring a notice of decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary-Treasurer. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the Ontario Land Tribunal for the giving of any subsequent notice of any appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variances and 15 days for consent applications to the applicant, an agent, and any other person who has filed a written request for such notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The last day to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful to the members of the committee, town staff, and the other people participating in the electronic hearing. The electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. We have one regret this evening, Mr. Ian Flemington. Any declarations of pecuniary interests? Okay, I see none. Thank you. At this time, I'll be taking requests for deferrals or withdrawals of applications. Who is up first? Ms. Secretary-Treasurer, I have 3 applications that are requesting deferrals this evening. Are there agents available to speak to the committee?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Who are you representing?
My name is Mehdi Hosseini from Hosseini Homes Corporation. I'm representing case number 5 for today, 241 Donisel Drive.
CAV 101?
Yes, 101, yes.
Okay. Okay. And you're requesting a deferral, I'm assuming, to go back to speaking to town staff as they have not been very favorable with your application?
Yes, and also there are a couple of other minor variances that has to be added to the application. So we want to take that time and talk to the planning staff to kind of resolve the issues that they have with this application.
Very well. Members, all those in support of a deferral? Okay, your application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer when you're ready to be put in the next available meeting agenda.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. Okay. Who would like to speak to the committee next?
I'm sorry, can I be heard?
Yes, go ahead. I can hear you now.
My name is Len Angelisi. I'm the agent for 144 Stewart Street.
Stewart Street, yes. Application CAV 104.
Yes. We would like to defer our hearing.
Once again, for reasons of...
Planning staff we had unfavorable comments. They did not agree with our variances. We'd like to go back and try to work with them.
Very well. Perfect. Thank you. Members, all those in support of a deferral? Okay, we are all in support. Your application is deferred and you'll see the Secretary Treasurer for the next available meeting agenda.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Who is next? Mr. Altred, I think you're muted. Are you next? Are you requesting a deferral?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
We're asking for a deferral of 46 Willis Drive, CAV 105.
Okay, yes, we have you. You're breaking out a little bit, but we've got it. 105, 346 Willis Drive. Going back to speak to town staff and the neighbors, I guess.
Yes, I apologize. The audio is really bad. I'm not sure you know you're echoing.
Yeah, you're echoing as well, so I think it's on both ends. I'll make this painless. All those in support of a deferral? Okay, your application has been deferred. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Are those all the items on the agenda that would like deferral? Is there anyone else waiting, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Madam Chair, Mr. Michael Tolowski, he wants to speak right now.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see him. Go ahead, Mr. Tolowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm going to request or move that applications CAV 098 and 099, both at 216 Watson Avenue, be deferred for insufficient notice. Madam Chair, my site visit, the sign was not posted in accordance with the procedures. The requirement is clearly that the signs must be posted and 10 days in advance in a location at the street where they can be read without trespassing onto the property. Yesterday morning, I observed both the signs behind the driveway in a position where you could not read them from the street. And I understand that the applicant was made aware of it. They relocated the signs yesterday, but that would only constitute 1 day's proper notice as opposed to the 10 that's required. And I understand we will give the applicant an opportunity to speak to this, but I believe this is just a straight matter of compliance, which they're not in.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kalowski. Is the agent for 2016 Watson Avenue CAV 098 of 2021 and CAV 099 of 2021 registered already? Is he on? Mr. Randall, I believe, Nicholas Randall.
Yes, I am here.
Okay. There is an echo. Does everyone else hear that?
No, I hear the echo on my end too.
Okay. Is that a problem from our technical staff?
Madam Chair, they said it's from his end that produce echo. So can you try again with like adjusting the volume or the audio, Mr.
Okay.
Nicholas
Mr. Randall, can you try adjusting your audio?
Yes. Is it a little bit better now?
Yeah, can you lower a little bit more? Maybe it's gonna be better.
What about now? Oh, that's worse.
It's getting worse.
I can hear you. I'm just lowering my blinds because I was being blinded.
Mr. Randall, do you have headphones so you can try to log with the headphones?
Yes, I can try with headphones.
Please.
One second. I apologize, I'm just connecting my headphones here. Why is this not working?
Is this working any better?
Oh,
Yeah,
much
perfect.
better.
Yeah, sounds
Perfect.
good.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right. So the issue with your signage that Mr. Talaski has raised, it was very clear in the instructions that you were provided when you were given the signs. So from our committee's perspective, when the sign is not up, not enough people who are living in the neighborhood can see and get information about the application if they so choose. So we have to give you a chance to explain before we make a decision about whether we're going to defer the application or we're going to let you proceed.
So at the time that we were putting in the sign, there's a big tree right in the middle of the two properties. So, and the roots extended out past towards where those signs would have gone onto the street. And at the time, it was very hard to actually get that in without the signs falling off because we couldn't get the sign in deep enough. So we had to find somewhere, so we pushed it back a little where there was softer ground. And then we were able to put it there recently because of all the rain when the ground was a little more like damp and we could actually get the sign in without it falling off.
Okay. I see that there are several letters of opposition to your application. Have you spoken to your neighbors? Do you, these individuals came about to know about your application through speaking to you or through, I just like clarification on that.
We had heard from one of our neighbors earlier in the process, but not that he was going to oppose the variance. We weren't informed of that. That was just while we were initializing the paperwork of buying the property.
Okay. Members, are there any other questions of Mr. Randall? Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Mr. Randall, thank you for the explanation of not posting. However, I was by today and they are posted. So notwithstanding your comments, you did find a way to post. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, I see none. So Mr. Talowski has requested that we defer both applications, CAV 098 and 099, and we need to vote on the matter. All those in support of the postponement, okay? All those against? So we've all agreed that we do need to defer these applications so that enough people get the notice and are able to understand what is happening with both of the developing properties. So you will have to come back on our next available agenda, and at that time, please do adhere to the specific instructions that you're given for the posting. We are required to have them 10 days prior to the meeting and no less than that.
I thought the sign wasn't the only immediate notice. I thought the application was also emailed to all the immediate neighbors as well prior to that.
No, the application is not emailed to all immediate neighbors. There is a notice that goes out to the, I think, 60 meters around the property, but the posting is a visual kind of post so that people will know exactly which property is addressed in the notice. Ms. Murray, you had your hand up. You wanted to say something?
I do, through you, Madam Chair, if we might have town staff, Jasmina and Heather, address the process that they go through. That might be helpful not only for the applicant, but for potential applicants in the future. Thank you.
Through Madam Chair, the sign with a sign notice of the posting of the sign were left to for the agent to pick up, and there is explanation on the notice how to post the sign exactly. We believed and we believe that the agent posts the sign, and it's from you to inspect the lands and see how is the sign. We are not doing the inspection, so we can say how the sign is posted or not. This is from you to decide that wherever is the clear from the road or it's good position. So the all other stuff they know, and it was sent through the email that the sign has to be in accordance with the sign notice that was picked up from the agent. So this is from our point how we actually enforce the sign posting and how advise the agent or applicant to post the sign. And this also they sign the notice of the sign, they sign and they return to us agreeing that they're gonna do in accordance with the sign notice how this to post the signs actually.
And it's actually in the paper that you received. I'm reading it right now. It says must be posted on the parcel of land for the variance no later than 10 days prior to the meeting date and be posted in a prominent location clearly visible from the road or street. It must be posted so that the public can read the sign without trespassing on your property, similar to how a real estate sign is posted.
Correct.
So it's very clear, and while I sympathize with weather and so forth, that things can happen, we do accept sometimes that there are these unmitigated circumstances. But the less that the sign is out there, the less people who are passing by or are in the area know about the application and the property, and they're unable to voice their opinion. And according to the bylaws, there has to be sufficient notice for the entire neighborhood before the application is heard in front of the committee. Do you have any further questions?
No, thank you. I guess we will see you at the next meeting.
You'll have to speak to the Secretary Treasurer, and she will get you back on the next available meeting. It may not be the next immediate meeting, but it'll be on the next available meeting. If everything is ready and your signage is posted and there's sufficient notice, and she has space on that meeting, she will definitely notify you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I think we have to start with our first. We have so many that were deferred today, so I just want to look through. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is CAV 097 of 2021 at 1069 Lakeshore Road. Miss Amelia Villa, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Emily Villa, and I'm from the office of John Wilmot Architect, Inc. I'm representing the owner of 1069 Lakeshore Road East. Thank you for page number 1. We are proposing a 2-story addition to the rear of the house and a 2nd-story addition on the west side. What we are seeking is relief from the zoning bylaw to permit an increase in height from 9 meters to 10.11 meters. And if you could turn to page 3, please. As you can see, I've highlighted the pertinent information. The height of the house, the existing house, is 11.8 meters, but we're proposing to match the existing lower roof line, which is at 10.11 meters high, and it's measured from the established grade, and that's where you can see letter A on the right-hand side there. And if we are to measure the height of the proposed roof from the surrounding grade, what we get is 8.92 meters, and that's the arrow B. So we have read the staff comments, and they support the variance we are seeking. They agree with our opinion that the variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. We reached out to the immediate neighbors, one to the east and to the west, and we briefly chatted with them and then dropped off a package for their review. They did not give me an indication of their opinion, but we have not heard back from either of them with questions or concerns. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Villa. Members, do you have any questions of Ms. Emily Villa at this time? I see none. Is there anyone who has called in to speak to this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Madam Chair, I don't see anybody that wants to speak.
Okay, very well. Let's take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Madam Chair, before we take this into committee, could I have staff speak to the revision to the second condition? This is our first application that we're seeing through this, and I'd like staff to speak to the addition of the 3-year time frame for substantial completion. I'd like to understand that a little bit more.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
Madam Chair, in speaking with the town solicitor, we've recommended that the second recommendation condition be updated to include substantially completed, to kind of the purpose of having any type of timeline is to make sure that whatever's been approved is based on what's the current context. And if a building permit has been pulled within the first 2 years, but the building has not been substantially completed, it may no longer be consistent in terms of the condition in the area. And we want to kind of safeguard going forward that everything's oh, I think there's a question.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at two.
Yeah, sorry.
Because I have to look at you and then I have to look at my papers. So sometimes I miss me. So just, holler. I apologize. Who had the question?
Madam Chair, it's
yes.
I had the question. Apologies for interrupted town staff.
Oh, that's okay.
Please continue, and I will ask my question at the end of your completion of your thought. Apologies.
Through you, Madam Chair, apologies. I was thinking she had a question about what I was currently saying. So basically, we want to make sure that whatever is being approved today is what's being built in the context in which it's in the future. And by incorporating also being substantially completed, then we're kind of safeguarding that whatever's built is based on what the current conditions are in the area. Thank you.
I do have a follow-up question to that, and then I'll go to Ms. Murray. The idea of it being substantially completed is very arbitrary. Like, who decides what is substantially completed? I'm sorry. I put you on the spot, but
so that's why we've tied it to the Ontario Building Code. So that way, there's kind of a measure for which that will be, and then when
so this section, sorry to interrupt you, this section C, division C, subsection 133 has all the parameters that would identify what constitutes substantially completed?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. All right, Ms. Murray, I apologize. I took your turn.
No,
I owe you one.
No, not at all, Madam Chair. Through you to town staff, my follow-up would be, is there a reason for 3 years instead of having it congruent with the 2 years from the date of a decision if a building permit has not been issued? So why you wouldn't stick to perhaps a 2-year timeline, if I may? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, is that when evaluating this, we felt that it was appropriate to be able to pull a building permit between the 2 years, but given seasons in Canada, we were concerned that if we compressed the time frame, that it might not be realistic to expect that of applicants to have also pulled their building permit and substantially completed within that time frame.
Okay. So 2 years if no building has happened, and then 3 years if some building has happened. It's basically what I'm understanding with substantial completion parameters.
So it's 2 years to pull your building permit. So if you have not pulled a building permit within those 2 years, it's the same kind of condition that we've had previously. And then now we're adding that if you've pulled a building permit, but you have not gone forward to substantially complete your building, then this variance no longer is applicable for this site.
Mr. Hardcastle?
So we're creating a scenario where we could be issuing a permit, but the permit works are not complete. And before those works are complete, it would be non-compliant if it was not completed or substantially completed within 3 years.
That's what I was understanding as well.
And would that affect the ability of the owner or constructor to complete the work and obtain further inspections from town staff towards an occupancy permit?
So through you, Madam Chair, I think in this situation, the motivator is that they would work towards being in compliance with this condition, and in this situation, then they would need to come back for another variance to comply. So that's something that, as a committee, you need to consider. But this way, someone would not be pulling a building permit and sitting on it for a long time without actually building the building. So I think it's a motivation to build what you're coming here to build.
Okay, sorry if I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Okay.
Say someone gets their building permit in winter. They have to wait until fall or the summer to start building. By then, they've already lost 6 months. And then at the 3-year mark, they're 6 months into it, and they may not, as Mr. Hardcastle said, be within substantial completion levels. Then what?
So then at that point, they would need to, based on the way that the condition is worded as right now, they would need to come back for another minor variance to comply.
Okay. Mr. Talowski, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The difficulty with this condition is even graver than you just indicated, others have indicated. Shepherd Road on the agenda tonight has this condition. It is for high-rise apartment buildings. It is impossible to achieve the condition that's being requested. You cannot reach substantial completion of a condominium tower in 1 year. I would say the same for pretty much any commercial or industrial application that comes before the committee, and frankly, a large number of houses in southeast Oakville that we deal with cannot be built within 1 year. And Chair, I'm inclined, and again, this was provided tonight with no pre-explanation to the committee. I'm inclined not to support the change in the condition at tonight's meeting, but request that the staff meet with the committee and explain it and consider the comments that are being made tonight that we're being asked to impose a condition which is probably unfair, creates a different timeline of which an applicant has the ability to construct depending on at what point in the 2-year process the building permit is issued. And I just don't understand how we can be imposing conditions that, in my mind, cannot be achieved.
Yeah. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think that, from our perspective, I want to burden the applicant to come back again once they are able to get their building permit, but for any reason aren't able to build within that time frame, given all the factors that go into it. So I don't know how Ms. Murray and Mr. Hardcastle feels.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would agree with the comments made by Mr. Talowski and yourself. I think that I'd like to hear more and have a chance to explore and understand this a little bit more before I'd be prepared to implement it as a condition tonight. So, yeah, I have of the like thinking.
Very well. Ms. Murray, so that we've heard from everybody?
On board with the balance of the committee, thank you.
Okay, so what I'm proposing is that we go back to our original second condition without the new additions for tonight's meeting. And then we'll have a follow-up discussion with town staff and legal. And then we can implement that at a time when we've all agreed that that is how we want to proceed. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, very well. Ms. Villa, tonight's meeting is out of control, so you're gonna have to like let loose. We had technical difficulties starting in, we had other issues. Now, you know, we're dealing with some logistics, but unfortunately, this is it's part of our process. We have to have these discussions, and I'm sorry it's at your expense and all the other applicants' expense. So we're ready to proceed now.
May I just
go
speak?
ahead? Oh yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
We've taken note of that condition, and because it didn't relate to us, because we were quite anxious to get going with the construction, that we'd obviously be able to meet that 3-year request. But it never occurred to us to follow through and what would happen in the future if this is one that's going to be implemented for all for all applications. Then I do agree with you, because in instances that we do have at the moment, projects that we have, I don't think that we can make that 3-year guarantee that we'd have the substantial completion in 3 years.
Okay, that's good to hear from an applicant's perspective. So we definitely, town staff has heard it, it's on record, and that will give us something to work with. We appreciate your submission. And thank you for being patient with us. Okay. All right, moving on. So, Mr. Hardcastle, do you want to make the motion? Okay.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the materials, undertaken my site visit, having heard the information from the applicant as well as comments from staff, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the 4 tests of the Act. I'll put forward a motion of approval, subject to 2 conditions. The first being that the addition be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated May 20th, 2021. And the second being that the approval expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued, in accordance with our previous standard condition. I would note that there were no members of the public present with respect to this matter, and no letters received with respect to this matter. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. All in support of the motion? Okay. Your motion has been, your application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
So next item on our agenda is CAV 100 of 2021 at 2073 Devon Road. Again, it's CAV 100 of 2021 at 2073 Devon Road. And I have the agent here as Mr. David Small, is that correct?
It's correct. Just a second, I'm just gonna find. Madam Chair, Mr. Peter Giordano was promoted to.
Okay. Mr. Giordano, do you hear us? Mr. Giordano, are you with us?
Would you please?
You need to unmute yourself, sir.
I have several times. It seems to fall back again. Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes. Go ahead, sir.
Perfect. Hi. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Peter Giordano with David Small Designs, 1405 Cornwall Road in Oakville, and I'm the authorized agent.
Great. Go ahead, sir. Your presentation is on the main screen.
Perfect. Thank you. Can I ask the moderator to go to page or slide number 2, please? So we're here today requesting your consideration on 2 variances: the increase in size for the attached private garage and an increase in coverage for the dwelling. Slide number 2 that we're looking at on the screen shows that in conversation with neighbors, our clients have written letters of support from 10 different neighbors, including 2 neighbors that are adjacent and 3 directly across the road. We have not been made aware of any neighbors that are in opposition. If I could ask you to scroll to the next slide, please. This is a context plan, a location context plan. Next slide. This is the subject property with the surrounding homes and some streetscape. Next slide, please. This is the front elevation that we're proposing, a 3D of the proposed front elevation. One of our variances is the attached garage. It's a tandem garage. It's an increase in garage floor area, but you'll see that the garage itself does not visually dominate the house as intended by the bylaw. Next slide, please. Right side elevation, we've done our best to articulate the massing. Next slide, please. It's the rear elevation, again, articulated massing. Next slide. And that's the left side elevation. And if you can go to the next slide, number 9. So here we have the site plan. As I had mentioned before, item number 1, our variance item. It's an increase of the footprint of the garage. 45 is permitted, 53.3 is proposed. It's an increase of 8.3 square meters internal to the dwelling in the form of a tandem 3-car garage configuration. Again, it's not visually dominant, and it does not increase or impact the massing of the streetscape. That's the yellow area that you see on the screen there. Variance number 2 is an increase in coverage. We're asking for what's permitted is 25%. We're asking for 25.97%. The house and footprint combined total 23.25, but with the addition of the 2 porches, it combines for an additional 2.73%, creating the addition of 0.97% or 10.5 square meters. Staff comments support our 2 variances. We believe them to be minor and appropriate and in keeping with the intent of the bylaw and the official plan as required by Section 45 of the Planning Act. We understand and accept the conditions as recommended. That concludes my presentation.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Giordano. We do note that we have all the letters of support of the surrounding neighbors. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this application, CAV 100 of 2021 at 2073 Devon Road? And if not, then are there any questions of Mr. Giordano at this time from the committee members? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary, if there's no one standing or waiting in queue to speak to this application, we can take the matter into committee.
Madam Chair, you can ask them to raise their hands if somebody wants to speak.
Okay. So if there's anyone who'd like to speak to this application, again, it's CAV 100 of 2021 at 2073 Devon Road. Okay, so if no one has raised their hand, who would like to take the matter into committee and provide a motion? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Tlowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll move that this application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the test of the Planning Act. I would note that the variances requested are indeed minor, and through the design and bringing the roof down, the applicant has done a good job of attempting to mitigate any impact of the massing of this building. I would also note 10 letters of support from the community, significant support. I would make that approval conditional on the dwelling being built in general accordance with the site plan number 4 dated February 10th, 21, and elevation drawings number 4 dated May 21, and that building permit issue within 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Tlowski. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Have a good evening, members of the committee.
Good evening, Mr. Giordano.
Thank you.
Application CAV 102 of 2021 at 58 to 62 Shepherd Road. Again, the application is CAV 102 of 2021, 58 to 62 Shepherd Road. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself. I know I'm going to butcher it, so go ahead.
No, not a problem. I butcher it all the time myself. My name is Michael Testaguza from the Biliari Group.
See, when you say it, it's not that bad, Testaguza, but I needed you to say it first.
Don't worry, it's a tongue twister. You should hear what I get. Okay, I've now lost my bearings, but in a happy way. So.
No, go ahead.
So I am here representing the applicant at 58 to 62 Shepherd Road. Of course, I'll give you a brief presentation, and I'll try to be brief on this one. The variances that are before you were approved in 2014. Construction began on the site. The site passed into receivership. Currently, right now, there's construction shoring and hoarding surrounding the site. In essence, what that means is there's a big hole, and my client has since purchased the site with the intention of going forward with the previously approved plans in the most expeditious manner possible. And it's funny, the conditions you were mentioning today, such a condition landed us back here at the committee to reestablish those previously approved variances. And there was no additional 3-year rider on those. But because the permit was rescinded, even though it was issued within the first 2 years, it was rescinded. And as a result, the CBO determined that the variances did need to be reestablished. So that is what we're here for today. The proposal is going through the site plan process as we speak. Again, our drawings have only matched the previous approval or made changes explicitly where staff have requested those changes. I'm working through that process right now. I note the staff report does support the application and provide the conditions. the conditions are generally acceptable, although I completely agree with the committee's statements tonight with respect to the 3 years. Especially for a project like this, it would be very, very awkward if a building was, 55% constructed or something of that nature, well above grade. And I was at the committee again in 3 years, saying we need another 6 months to get to substantial completion. So I would also request that that condition be modified in the manner that it's been modified for the previous applications. With respect to the variances themselves, obviously the committee has them in front of them, but the first is to increase the maximum permitted front yard setback to 5.2 meters from 2 meters. That's to allow for additional landscaping along the front yard. It's streetscape improvements in essence. If anyone's walked down Shepherd Road, you'll note that the streetscape there is quite barren. So that's the purpose behind that. The intent, obviously, of the 2 meter setback is to create an urban condition. In this case, the urban condition will still exist. Units fronting onto Shepherd will be live work. There'll be 9 of them. So there'll be 9 individual unit entrances onto Shepherd, creating that urban condition and therefore meeting the intent of the bylaw, as well as the OP. And there's no anticipation of adverse impacts from that, from providing additional pedestrian realm. The second of the 2 is with respect to parking at grade in the internal courtyard. Now, the parking itself only takes up about 14% of the grade here. Most of the parking, is below grade on this site. The need for the variance is because both of the driveways are also being considered in that calculation. And of course, the parking being located at the back of the building, there's significant driveway to get you to the back, and that generates the need for that variance. So again, technical in nature. I have reviewed the residents' comments and, not being, of course, interfacing with the minor variance process and the planning process quite frequently. I understand the nature of the comments. The comments generally don't actually have any bearing on the proposal with respect to the front yard setback or the parking at grade. They deal with matters of traffic, of sight lines, things of this nature, which aren't before the committee today. They've already been approved in the zoning bylaw. Again, I completely understand why they're being brought up. People don't interface with this process very frequently, and as such, they're just asking general questions. But the matters that are being addressed, generally speaking, aren't within the scope of the variances. So, as I mentioned, that's my presentation. I tried to keep it as brief as possible. I'm happy to answer any questions that may come along. And as I mentioned, I condition to simply limit the time frame to 2 years to building permit issuance.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Testaguza. Are there any questions at this time? No, I see none. Madam Secretary, has anyone of the members that have, or the public that have provided opposition letters asked to speak to the committee, or is anyone in attendance today who is actually waiting to speak to this application, CAV 102 of 2021 for 58 to 62 Shepherd Road? Please raise your hand and allow us to invite you to speak to the committee.
Madam Chair, I'm just promoting people from the attendees who wants to speak with in regards to the application.
Mr. Testaguza, by the time that they are promoted, I'm assuming you have done some traffic studies so that we can quell those concerns.
Correct, yes. Traffic studies were done back I'm sure several traffic studies were done between the early 2010s up to the 2017 approval. Traffic studies have also been requested as part of the site plan process. Again, not with any bearing on the variances requested. The variances requested are front yard setback and percentage of parking at grade related to the site. But yes, Recent traffic studies have been done, and commentary from staff back on those traffic studies has been very minimal.
Okay,
and the conclusions are generally supported that the application is supportable from a traffic perspective.
Okay. Yeah, well, we understand that from our perspective because we do this all the time. The members of the public do not understand that. So it's sometimes that we like to ask the questions just to have the response heard out loud.
No, of course. And it's completely fair. Like I said, people don't interface with this process on a day-to-day basis. And so they see a proposal, they see 10 stories, and 200 odd units and say, I generally don't support that. It's of course been approved by the bylaw already, those two facets of the application.
Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Secretary Treasurer, who is in line to speak to us? I don't see them, so you're gonna have to let me know who they are.
Mr. Arash.
Yes, hello, thank you for your time.
Okay, Mr. Arash, is your camera available? And if it is available, would you kindly turn it on? Or are
Sure.
you calling in from a phone line?
No, I am calling from my phone, so I can, let's see, can you see me?
Yes, very good, thank
Perfect,
you.
great, no problem.
That allows us to put the face to the name and have that conversation.
Of course, no problem. So I'm a resident of 55 Spears Road, and we've gotten a number of notices about this construction project and the amendments that we recently received. The concerns I had were partly related to traffic, partly specifically about our building's exit onto Shepherd Road and how this project is going to entail it, as it is sitting right next to the exit that goes onto Shepherd Road, given the request for expanded impact on the front sides of the building or the lateral aspects of the building. And in addition to that, in terms of timeline, how this project is going to be affected, if at all, by these changes. My partner and I are both healthcare workers, and so sometimes we are working at night and sleeping during the day in order to look after the public. So in that perspective, we'd like to know how long do we have to withstand not sleeping at night and not sleeping during the day for prolonged construction of this project.
Thank you. Those are all fair questions, and I'm sure Mr. Testaguza has very comforting answers for you coming up very shortly. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, is there anyone else that would like to address the committee so that we allow Mr. Testaguza to take down all the notes and then address everyone at once?
Madam Chair, I do have a second attendee, Mrs. Williams, but I asked to unmute, but if she wants to speak, like she has to unmute herself.
Is that Marilyn?
Yes,
Correct.
This is Marilyn. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I don't really have a camera.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
I'm an owner at 55 Spears Road, and much like the first person, I should introduce myself. I'm Marilyn Williams. I own in the 55 Spears Road condo, and one of the major concerns that I have is the traffic flow, because during rush hour it gets extremely busy in that corner, and with the construction that's going to be adding to it. And that is my major concern, the traffic and the noise that is going to happen in this area as a result of the construction.
Okay, thank you. They're all valid concerns. Is there anything else? Madam Secretary, anyone else would like to speak to the matter?
I don't see anybody else.
Okay, very well. Go ahead, Mr. Testaguza.
Certainly, thank you. So I heard three concerns there. One with respect to the location of the access relative to the site just to the west. One with respect to construction timing, and a third with respect to general traffic. So with respect to the access first and the adjacency of another access immediately to the west, you'll note on the site plan, and I'm not sure if we can pull that up, It was submitted with the application. If we can, it may be a useful visual aid. But if not, I can certainly keep going. Oh, perfect. So you'll note on the site plan, there's actually two accesses proposed. And the primary access obviously is actually central to the site. That has two-way movement, so in and out. The second is provided more for emergency vehicles, garbage collection, things of that nature. Of course, it can be used by anyone. It's just less likely to be used. First off, based on the nature of the adjacent access, but also secondly, just based on the location of the underground, the ramp to the underground, which is located at the southeast corner of the site. And so naturally, as you're exiting, you'd be more inclined to use the access that's closer to you and provides two-way movement in comparison to what I would characterize more as a service lane on the west side of the parcel. Sticking with the traffic concerns, I did pull up the traffic report. So I do note that the traffic report is expecting 58 AM peak hour trips. So that's roughly 1 car a minute and 68 two-way trips to be generated. So just over 1 car a minute to be generated by the application. And it did conclude that generally speaking, that would have minimal impact on the traffic in the surrounding area. So that's the raw numbers of it. There's been no issue with that in staff's review, but it's sometimes helpful for people to get a quantification and an idea because they think 200 people and they think 200 people will leave all at the same time, which is fair. But you know, quantified over an entire peak period, we're talking about slightly less than 1 trip per minute in the morning and slightly more than 1 trip per minute in the PM peaks. Lastly, with respect to construction timing, I'm sure my client would like to say that they'll have this application done as quickly as possible. Obviously, as you mentioned, there's noise bylaws that regulate construction activities and don't allow excessive noise over the night hours. During the daytime hours, of course, there still has to be consideration of neighborliness with respect to noise on site. And through the site plan process, I'm sure staff will be requesting and enforcing construction management practices, best practices, which is fairly typical. So I'd probably like to say that that type of a matter is more appropriately dealt with through the site plan phase, but it's certainly a consideration.
Very well. Thank you very much. I hope that has answered the questions of the members of the public that have come forth, and we appreciate your submission. And Mr. Testaguza will take all these concerns as well to his client, and moving forward, any further inquiries into the matter can go through the site plan process.
I could add a further comment, please.
Yes, okay, Marilyn, go ahead, sorry. And then
initially, I heard studies on the traffic done around 2014. I travel that road regularly every day to go to work, morning and night. And I see the traffic build up since my building went up at 55 Spears. So I'm having a hard time when you say like 1 car a minute, because sometimes to turn that corner, the traffic goes way down the other road, way down Cornwall Road. So I'm having a difficult time understanding 1 car a minute with that traffic flow.
Miss Castello and Mr. Arash, I don't mean to interrupt you. The reason I allowed those questions to go through and for you to get some indication as to how the process is handled and to get some answers. But frankly speaking, this construction has been approved. They have strict policies that they have to adhere to within that time frame. And really what we are only here to do is to approve 2 minor variances. Nor the committee members have any control over traffic or noise. Those are all dealt in a different arena altogether. Really what we are here to do is to approve those 2 variances that are requested by the applicant, and they are primarily one, which is the front yard setback, which will allow them to have more green space over a 5 meter versus a 2 meter distance. And then the second one, it has to do with a technical variance for parking space allocation. And those are all supported by town staff who have done their due diligence in that matter and have advised us as such. So all your concerns, while they're valid, and I wanted you to have some sort of explanation, and you also know now where to go with further questions or further concerns from that perspective. But no matter how much you disagree with it here, we won't be able to rectify it for you or make any changes to it whatsoever, because it's not within our purview. So I apologize if I'm cutting you off, but our procedural bylaw is that we hear from the applicants, then we hear from the neighbors, then we ask the applicant to provide further explanation, and then we take the matter into committee. So we've heard your concerns, we've noted them, they are on public record. Mr. Testaguza has heard them and provided his explanation for them. Then if you're not satisfied with that, you will have to take it through the appropriate venue for that.
Madam Chairman, if I may, it's a matter of clarification. The point that Mr. Testaguza made was about regular traffic. I was specifically requesting an explanation about expanding the front lawn, how that is going to, in addition, affect traffic, how that is going to affect our exit onto Shepherd Road, and how, as my neighbor also mentioned, is going to affect the day-to-day traffic during the construction period, not thereafter, not after the site is constructed, but rather during the construction, how it's going to affect the traffic. And as my neighbor also mentioned, their traffic data is outdated by almost a decade. I heard 2010 from Mr. Testaguza, and Marilyn said 2014. I haven't reviewed that the other documentation that perhaps Marilyn had seen. Irrespective, I wanted to clarify that my concerns were not there after the completion of the project, but rather during.
Okay, and I will allow that for that secondary clarification, and then perhaps town staff following Mr. Testaguza can speak to the matter. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Testaguza.
And sorry, I do apologize. I do my best to take a note and understand what the concern is, but I do apologize if I misunderstood it. So with respect to how the change in setback would affect traffic patterns, sight lines, I just want to clarify, we're requesting to move the building back 3 meters from where it would otherwise have to be located. At the northwest corner of the site that's most closely adjacent to where you live now, because of the way the right-of-way actually works in that area, the property line, the interface between where public stops and where private begins, there's actually a 1.9 meter, I believe, setback at that corner. So nearest to yourself, the building actually does comply with the minimum and maximums. Because it's an odd property line that tapers as it moves from west to east, it's actually, the eastern portion of the building that has a greater setback. If anything, with respect to safety of access, that only allows for additional sight lines for people making rights and lefts out of the building. So I don't see any necessary concern during or after construction with an increase to the front yard setback. Again, I may be misunderstanding, and I really do apologize if I am, but that's my best approximation of an answer there. And sorry, with respect to the traffic data, I had noted that traffic studies had been done since the early 2010s, I'm sure. The most recent traffic study was conducted over the summer, but traffic counts generally during the pandemic obviously haven't been taken because they would be widely unrepresentative of post-pandemic scenarios, we assume. So most studies, in fact, all studies I've been privy to through the course of that pandemic have used available data, right before the pandemic. So I guess in this case, that would be February, January of 2020. So rest assured, staff do review that through the site plan process. They make sure we're using the most appropriate and representative data, which would be road traffic data just prior to the pandemic having commenced. That was what was used in the traffic study. So it's not old data, other than the fact that it's not taken and collected during the pandemic, because that would be misrepresentation. So I do hope that was helpful.
Thank you. Ms. Buckfield, do you have something to add?
I would, through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to add that the applicant is currently going through the site plan application process. And in that process, they have submitted a traffic information study addendum that's dated April 2021. So they have updated based on current standards, and the application is being evaluated based on the current context.
Okay, thank you. Members, I'm in your hands. If you have no further questions, we can take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town staff's written report, which I note is in support of the variances requested. Also noting that I was influenced by Mr. Testaguza's presentation, which was good, and I think his responses to some of the community questions were quite thorough. I note that there are 3 letters against the application for the 2 variances. I also note that there is one in favor of moving forward with this application. But I will say that I'm satisfied with the minor variance application meeting all 4 tests under the Planning Act, for which we have jurisdiction, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application with the following conditions, which are that the building be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan, and elevations that are to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of a decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. None opposed.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Have a good evening. Thank you. Okay, so application CAV 103 at 255 Cherry Hill Road. Again, it's application CAV 103 of 2021 at 255 Cherry Hill Road. I have Mr. Graham Barrett here listed as the agent. Is he with us?
Yes. Good evening, committee members, Madam Chair, town staff.
Good evening, Mr. Barrett. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, so we're here to propose 3 minor variances in order to build a new single-family dwelling. One for garage area, 48.27 meters squared proposed, 45 meters max. Residential floor area, 43.87 percent proposed, and 41% maximum. It's a difference of 19.38 meters squared, or approximately 208 square feet. And finally, for lot coverage, 37.29% proposed, 35% maximum. These variances are all quite minor, allowing for a bit more storage and workspace in the garage and livable space in the dwelling. The lot coverage variance is exacerbated by the front and rear covered areas, with the actual dwelling, including the garage, accounting for 30.6% of the lot coverage. If you skip ahead to the next slide, you can see the site plan with a breakdown of the coverage in the bottom right there. I'd like to mention planning staff were consulted prior to submitting this application, and revisions were made to the original proposal. So what you have before you tonight represents a concentrated effort to coordinate with the town and arrive at a solution that works for all concerned. I have read the staff report. I appreciate their positive comments, and I concur with their opinions that the proposed variances are indeed minor and that their impacts are mitigated through design elements and so on. There is one thing I would like to mention. There is a tree at the front of the dwelling. If you zoom in, you can see there is a tree located just in front of where the porch will be. It is labeled as to remain, and the owner was considering keeping it, but I just received an arborist report today, and it's recommended for removal due to a cavity at the base of the trunk, along with insect damage and decay. An application to remove a private tree will be submitted, and the owner is happy to plant new trees as directed by urban forestry. I wanted to bring this to your attention. Should you decide to approve this application and impose the condition recommended by staff that the dwelling be built in accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations. This changes nothing about the dwelling, but it would result in a minor change on that site plan. So in the interest of transparency, I thought I'd bring that up. The designers were very careful to consider the changing character of this area. If you skip ahead to page 10 of the slides that I provided, starting there, you'll see numerous photos of the immediate area and comparable dwellings with similar character. So we believe that the proposal before you does fit well with the changing character of this neighborhood. I also looked into other approvals nearby, and while I of course know that precedence doesn't dictate the committee's decisions, we have seen some similar approvals in the immediate area. You skip ahead, you can see 246 Cherry Hill. There's a few notice of decisions after these photos. So 246 Cherry Hill had a lot coverage of 39% approved with a 35% max. 226 Jones, 45% approved, 35% max. And there's several others, but I know you've all been busy this evening, so I don't think it's necessary to go through each one. But what we're proposing here is not out of line with comparable approvals nearby. I'd also like to mention that I mailed out letters to numerous nearby residences informing the neighbors of this application and offering to chat if there were any questions or concerns. I've not heard back from any of them. That is 6 homes on Cherry Hill, 1 on Applewood, and 3 on Jones, all the closest homes to this property. I've also submitted some renderings of the proposed dwelling if staff would like to put those up on screen, although I didn't receive those till just after the deadline for material submission. So if not, that's fine, but they do give you a nice idea of what this home will look like, and I believe it will be a tasteful and suitable addition to the neighborhood. So in conclusion, I'm of the opinion that this proposal passes the 4 tests. Planning staff are on board, which we're grateful for. And as far as I'm aware, there are no neighbors in opposition. So thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Are there any questions of Mr. Barrett at this time? I see none. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this application CAV 103 of 2021 at 255 Cherry Hill Road? Or has anyone called in the Secretary Treasurer?
Madam Chair, there is no phone calls.
Okay, very well. Would like to move a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, reviewed the submitted materials, including the drawings and the written staff report, and having heard the presentation from Mr. Barrett, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act. The variances are relatively minor in terms of scope, and their impact is mitigated by the design of the building to some degree. So I'm satisfied that the variance can move forward. I would note that there were no members of the public present or written submissions provided with respect to this, and as such, the motion should be subject to 2 conditions. First being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated 2021-05-18, and the second being that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, your application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Have a good evening.
Good evening. Okay, application CAV 106 of 2021 at 539 Taplow Crescent. Again, CAV 106 of 2021 at 539 Taplow Crescent. Good evening.
Good evening.
Arujo, am I pronouncing? That's correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. Okay, do you have a presentation? Go ahead, it's being pulled up right now.
So we were in front of the committee back in November for a minor variance for a detached garage. We were approved to construct at 22 by 32 feet. We've since constructed the garage in our 22 by 32 feet interior dimension. So we are back in front of the committee to seek approval for the as-built dimensions. We have consulted with the adjacent neighbors and do have letters of support. And we're here to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions of Mr. and Mrs. Arujo at this time from the members? Okay. I don't see any notices from the public, whether in support or in opposition. So you
the letters of support, yeah, they were submitted with our application.
Okay, so I must have missed them. It's my fault. I was just looking for them, and we're looking through various screens, so I apologize. If there are no questions, Ms. Secretary, has anyone called in to speak to this application? Oh yes, I do note them now. Sorry, I just missed them.
There is no.
Has anyone called to speak to this application?
No, no, there is no phone.
Is there anyone on that is logged in that would like to speak to this application, that would like to raise their hand? Please indicate so. The Secretary Treasurer can promote you to a panelist.
There is no phone calls, Madam Chair.
Okay, very well. So we have no questions, we have no phone calls, we have no opposition. Who would like to move a motion? We can take the matter into committee. Mr. Talowski, you want to take the last one of the evening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll move the application be approved as applied for. I think that it meets the Foretest the Planning Act. I would note that there's support from the local community with no opposition, and that this is a minor change from the previous application that was approved. I would make that approval conditional on the garage being built in substantial conformance with the elevation and site plans dated May 28th, 2021, and that a building permit issue within 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, your application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, we have minutes to confirm. I was not there, so someone else will have to move them. Go ahead, Ms. Murray, thank you.
Motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay. All those in support? Okay, motion approved. Adjournment. Okay, it's a tie. You can pick, Ms. Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you.
The hands went up at the same time, so
Yeah.
I'll let you pick.
Yeah, John.
Okay. I don't know if we've got other people who no, we're just us right now. Okay, so we are adjourned.